Turning words into a story is less about arranging sentences and more about awakening a pulse, an emotional, psychological, and imagistic current that carries the reader forward. All the links mentioned in this video are in the description box below. In this video, we'll explore why turning words into a story matters and how it transforms raw language into lived experience, giving shape, emotion, and meaning to the human imagination. Let's dive in. Every story begins as a scatter of impulses, a phrase, an image, a question, a memory, a contradiction. The craft lies in gathering these fragments and coaxing them into coherence without suffocating their mystery. Storytelling is the art of shaping raw language into lived experience, and the journey from words to narrative is both intuitive and deliberate. It requires attention to rhythm, structure, character, and the deeper thematic undercurrents that give a story its resonance. When you understand how these elements interact, words stop being static marks on a page and become a world the reader can enter. Every story begins with a seed, something small, often fragile, that carries within it the potential for expansion. This seed might be a single sentence that arrives uninvited, a line of dialogue overheard in passing, or an image that refuses to leave you alone. Sometimes it is a question, what if a person discovered a truth too late? Sometimes it is a contradiction, a character who wants two incompatible things. The seed doesn't need to be clever or fully formed, it only needs to contain tension. Tension is the spark that animates narrative. When you identify the seed, you are identifying the emotional or thematic pressure that will drive the story forward. The seed is not the story itself, it is the gravitational center around which the story will gather. Before structure, before plot, before even character, there is language. Words have texture, rhythm, and emotional charge. When you allow language to lead, you discover the tone and atmosphere of the story long before you know its shape. Free writing, associative writing, or simply following the cadence of a sentence can reveal surprising pathways. A story often begins not with a plan, but with a voice, your own or a character's, speaking into the dark. Trusting that voice is essential. It may wander, contradict itself, or circle around the same idea repeatedly, but in that wandering, it reveals the emotional terrain of the story. Language is not merely a tool, it is a compass. Characters are not created by listing traits. They emerge from desire, fear, contradiction, and vulnerability. To turn words into a story, you must allow characters to become more than placeholders for plot. Ask what they want, what they avoid, what they cannot forgive, what they cannot admit. A character becomes real when their inner life begins to pressure the outer world. Story grows from this pressure. When a character wants something and the world resists, narrative begins. When a character hides something from themselves, subtext emerges. When a character changes or refuses to change, the story finds its arc. Characters are the emotional engines of storytelling, and their complexity gives the story its depth. A story becomes immersive through specific sensory detail, not description for its own sake, but detail that reveals something essential about the world or the character moving through it. The chipped mug on the counter, the hum of a distant generator, the way someone hesitates before answering, these details anchor the reader in the moment. They also carry emotional weight. A world is not built through exposition, but through the careful placement of details that imply history, atmosphere, and stakes. When you choose details with intention, the world begins to breathe. Once you have language, character, and atmosphere, you begin to sense the story's spine, the underlying structure that holds everything together. This spine is not necessarily a rigid plot outline, it is the emotional or thematic arc that guides the story's movement. It might be a journey from denial to acceptance, from innocence to experience, from isolation to connection. The spine gives the story direction. Without it, the narrative drifts. With it, even the most experimental structure feels purposeful. The spine is the promise the story makes to the reader. This is where we are going, even if the path is uncertain. Stories move through conflict. not necessarily violence or argument, but friction. Internal conflict, relational conflict, moral conflict, environmental conflict. Conflict creates stakes, and stakes create momentum. But momentum also comes from discovery. The unfolding of information, the revelation of secrets, the deepening of understanding. A story is a dance between what the reader knows and what they long to know. When you balance conflict with discovery, the narrative gains propulsion. Each scene becomes a step forward, even if the character feels they are stepping back. A story is ultimately an emotional journey. Readers may remember the plot, but they return to the feeling. To turn words into a story, you must shape the emotional arc with intention. This arc is not a straight line. It is a series of rises and falls, tensions and releases. Emotional modulation, knowing when to intensify, when to restrain, when to let silence speak, is essential. The emotional arc gives the story its rhythm. It ensures that the climax feels earned and the resolution feels inevitable. Turning words into a story is an act of creation, but also an act of listening. A story is a living thing. It grows, shifts, resists, surprises. Your task is not to control it, but to collaborate with it. When you listen to the language, to the characters, to the emotional truth beneath the surface, the story reveals its shape. And in that revelation, words become more than words. They become experience, memory, transformation. In our next video, you'll explore the right medium, finding your place in the creative universe. Like and subscribe for more content from the Writing Studio.